Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome to the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Ben. And Carissa is here, maybe? Not here. Okay, everyone. So, and maybe she is here, but hopefully the microphone didn't mess up. But yeah, we also have Carissa. She is our co-host, and everyone, welcome into Computer America. So today on the program, we have a special one planned for you, where instead of a guest, instead of news, we have a special topic to talk about. And Carissa, can you hear me? Carissa, I see you unmuting and muting your mic, so you may have to unplug, replug your mic, or, worst case scenario, restart your computer. You have to, wait, try again. No, that's barely coming in. It's not, Weird. We had this working before the show, folks. I promise you, but for some reason it's not right now. But everyone, so today, special segment, everything about voting online, and that's something that we normally cannot do. And I think that a lot of people out there will kind of ask themselves, well, why can't we vote online? We do so many other things, and hey, it's 2020. It is insert current year. Why can't we do obvious thing? And we're going to talk about why you can't do exactly that. So everyone, sit back and enjoy. I hope that you find this segment interesting. And just one moment, and let's see, I can hear you. I might need to restart. Okay, perfect. Go ahead and restart, Carissa, and rejoin, and we'll do our thing. So everyone, we're going to do that in just a moment. But everyone, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including the website. You can find past shows, future shows, video archives, audio archives. You can find anything that we do here on Computer America, including reviews, show notes, articles, op-eds, everything like that you can find at our website. You can also find links to social media. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that and more. Hey, we definitely appreciate it when you reach out and join us here at the show. Okay, so I think with that being said, again, Carissa is working on getting her microphone restarted. So with that being said, we're just going to, I think, get started with today's topic. And again, today's topic, just to give you a little bit of background, we kind of got the idea last week, when Carissa raised a very important question. We do so many things online, including banking. We have crucial medical systems that are going online. We have, we have surgeries, procedures where people are literally on a table and being cut open by robots that can be done securely online. And that is literally life-saving work. We put people's lives in the hands of the internet, something that we claim is not good enough for online voting. So why not online voting? And we have dug up a lot of information about this and some very interesting case studies, things that have already happened and in places that hey, maybe you didn't even think about it, but online voting is actually currently going on. It's just such a minority, and it's spoiler alert, online voting is not currently ready for the prime time. So again, all these different topics and all these different things, I'm trying to think about where would be the best place to start. And I think we're going to start with, let's see, I think we're going to start with this article here. And actually, not this one. Let's see. Okay, this one. This is a good place to start because due to recent events, and by recent, I mean this year, online voting seems like a no-brainer. When you can't safely and physically group up a lot of people in the same place at the same time, then hey, it seems like online voting would be the most logical thing to do. You can't safely have people stand shoulder to shoulder. You can't safely have people crammed into the same room, touching the same surfaces, breathing the same air. Why isn't online voting a thing? And this is a website called Politico, and more specifically cybersecurity, saying that coronavirus boosts push for online voting despite security risks. There you go. And so 3 states will let some of their voters cast ballots online in the coming weeks, a trend that has gained momentum from the coronavirus pandemic, but threatens to introduce new security risks to the nation's already vulnerable elections. This was published 3 or 4 months ago, 0501, by Eric Geller. And this is something that I found very interesting when they said that certain states are allowing you to do this already. And I wanted to look into that, see what the past has done for us when it comes to online voting. And one in particular, let's see, I think it was... I had an article here. I mean, there's another article here from The Verge talking about this, but this was all the way back in October 2012, during the 2012 presidential elections, as to why we can't vote there now. And, why we can't vote online in 2012. This has obviously been an issue that has received a lot of interest over, kind of over time. And let me just say this. There were already states and there were already instances where you can vote online. This was a special privilege given to only a few people. And let's see right there. So just real quick before we, kind of really get started here, Carissa should be joining us. And let's see if that works.
Hello.
Carissa, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Praise the Lord.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. So everyone, co-host Carissa. Carissa.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for dropping in. And again, just like a minute before the show, everything was working. And then, hey, things happen. Things happen, technical difficulties. So, Carissa, glad to have you here. I was just about to get into just a quick recap for Carissa, just about to get into why we can't vote online, and the fun little fact that in the 2016 elections, I want to say, about 100,000 people cast their votes online. Little known fact. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, but it's something that is only extended to certain people in certain circumstances, mainly to those who are living overseas, don't have access to mail-in ballots, and primarily it's like the U.S. Armed Forces, people who are stationed overseas and can't, mail in a ballot, can't get a secure ballot, and they can't verify that the pathway from from, let's say, whatever front that they're on, wherever they're stationed, and it won't be tampered with by the time it gets back to the U.S. and counted by whatever state that they're voting from or, voting for. Yeah, so it's something that is very specific to armed forces and people living overseas. Although there are about 3 million people who are eligible voters who live overseas. So this is something that is probably going to continue to grow, because let's face it, those 3 million people would find it much easier to vote online. And let's face it, the United States, with their 350 million voters, would probably find it convenient as well.
Especially if you lived in like a rural area where the mailman maybe comes once a week. That kind of thing,
for sure, for sure. You're still waiting for Pony Express to come. It's very important that people have access to voting and convenient ways to vote. But again, is online voting the answer? And right now we're on this article from The Verge, and this was just, kind of an example of how back in 2012 we were still asking the same questions. And really, ever since the internet has been around, since the late 90s, early 2000s, people have been wondering, when is it finally going to happen for us? The conclusion that this article from 2012 found was that, there's going to be an increasing push for it, but at the same time, there's no good security reason as to why we should trust online voting. And that was from 2012. That still resonates true here in 2020, much the same way. So there's that article. Just wanted to say that this is not a new idea. This has been around for a little while. And I also wanted to say that in some situations, very narrow situations, we do already do this. This is just not widely available for a number of reasons.
Gotcha.
And let's see, here's another article here, this one from TechCrunch, saying that we must consider secure online voting. This was just published March 30th, 2020. And again, there's a big push because there is a pandemic. There's a much bigger push because we cannot safely hold elections in physical locations. So let's get it online. Let's get the ball rolling. Whatever hurdles we need to overcome, let's do it. And they say that, in fact, 23 U.S. states and District of Columbia allow some voters to return absentee ballots via email, while 5 others permit voters to do the same using a web portal. So that's not strictly a completely digital solution. That is getting your ballot by mail or getting it by email, printing it out, filling it out, and then submitting it through designated online portals or via email, but it's still physical at some point, and it can be traced back to an individual. Right. With that being said, this article is saying that we should not be debating whether online voting should exist, but rather what is the most secure way to facilitate the electronic voting, because it's already being done, and because it's needed by some voting groups whose volume might expand in the near future. And of course, they're talking about those who are active duty military as well as those with disabilities. I think I read another one of these articles that said that voting participation among those with disabilities has fallen in the past 2 years by like 2%, which isn't a lot, but you could claim that 2% is a lot, but we should be expanding the ability for people to vote, especially those with disabilities, because we've been so aware of the American with Disability Act and, compliance with, certain rules and regulations that make it easier for those with disabilities to, kind of do things that we kind of take for granted. So much compliance has been done over the past couple of years. To hear that the voting is actually going down, that is in itself an issue. So
I wonder if that's because maybe they just feel unsafe going to the voting locations, or maybe they just have, transportation problems or, something like that. I wonder what's causing that decline.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it's pretty hard to find a particular cause, because they show here that in 2008, it went from 57.3% of those who have disabilities voted, and in 2016, it went to 55.9%.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's over the kind of over the course of 8 years, and it's hard to really determine. But for any case, those who have some issue physically getting to the poll, there should be a way to make sure that they can kind of still vote. So there is a problem. And the solution is kind of a question of, online voting. Let's go ahead and do it. There have been a number of different systems already put in place, and I got to say that one interesting one that we're going to talk about a little bit later is the great state of Estonia. Yes, good job, Carissa. I knew you knew it. Estonia. Yes, we're going to talk about their election, kind of tribulations back in 2013, how they did it, and how honestly what Estonia did back in 2013, and what they're still working with today, is actually probably one of the closest forms of national voting being done online. Like everyone else does paper ballots, everyone else does in person, mail-in ballots, so on and so forth. Estonia has a completely different system and is, much further ahead, but at the same time still very not secure. And we're going to talk about why that is. So some of the other information I found before we get to Estonia is this one called the Mobile Voting Project. You can imagine what they focus on, being able to vote from your phone. Let's talk about why they're pushing it and, kind of pick apart what they want to do, I guess. And, kind of just show that even some of the best solutions that they have out there aren't exactly the best. So they say that why mobile voting? Because our current electoral system is failing our voters. Our current approach to election leaves many voters behind, especially military, rural, and disabled voters. For them, voting is cumbersome. And of course, their votes can go uncounted because let's say if you're serving in the military, again, unless you're in some of those very special situations where you are, I think we have like 3 million active duty military and only about 3 million eligible voters living overseas, only 100,000 were able to cast their votes online. That's a big disparity. Yeah, you definitely need to work on that. But hey, even though you are serving your country, even though you are, in some cases being a more, you should probably have, not probably, you definitely should have a vote in who is leading your country and leading your military that you are currently employed in. Right. Your vote is probably not going to be tallied because you're currently, active duty and you can't do it. So there should be a way. And they claim that on top of that, you have blind, visually impaired, and going out voting and making sure that your polling place has the right tools to facilitate someone with your disabilities, but on top of that, making sure that you're right to casting a secret ballot, which is, you get voting booth, no one looks over your shoulder, no one's able to, the whole point behind a secret ballot is to make sure that there's no one coercing you to, into who to vote for, because once you step into a voting booth, it is completely up to you. No one's looking over your shoulder. No one is telling you who to vote for.
But that also causes problems if you're visually impaired and somebody has to come in and read it to you. Exactly. You completely lose that ability to cast a secret ballot because you need someone to do that. Whereas opposed to if you could vote from home and you had your, I know JAWS, for instance, is able to read things off of a computer screen, or for the visually impaired, be able to read these things for you. Mm-hmm. If you had your technology that you had at home, maybe you wouldn't need the person sitting there reading the ballots to you. So, right. The next point is the future. We should be prepared. All signs point to inevitability of mobile voting. We have the technology and the security intelligence to tackle this right now. I gotta say, this is what started this whole conversation. Like Carissa said, let me quote this out here saying, think about what we do on our phones every day. Talk to loved ones, conduct business, buy toothpaste, transfer money. I don't know why buying toothpaste was so important to these people, but transfer money. Shouldn't we be able to use some of that technology to participate in our own democracy? If we want people to vote, we have to make it secure and we have to make it easy. We have the technology to achieve both with mobile voting. So, again, that was what started this whole thing. Transfer money, do business, have private conversations, all of that is something that we entrust in our technology. But I think it's very flawed to say, shouldn't that come to mobile? Because talking to a loved one, yes, we all want private conversations, but at the same time, we know for a fact that private conversations do not happen. The National Security Agency logs every single piece of metadata and logs every single phone call made on U.S. cellular networks in this country every single day. It is not a private endeavor. Conducting business... yeah? I was going to say, but the thing is like, even if it's just the government looking, then that shouldn't be a problem because they're not going to be paying that much close attention. Also, there should be regulations on that so the government can't touch things like that, I would think.
You would hope that regulation would stop these things. But another thing here is that voting, as we said a couple of days ago, is that voting is handled on a state level, not a federal level.
Right.
So the federal government should have no interference in how votes are cast, counted, monitored, anything like that. So a federal system would indeed be a constitutional infringement on the right to vote. So even that very thing is, kind of against the rules. So there's that. Transfer money. We do that we do this whole system with COBOL is the programming language that we use and the system behind it. It's a very simple, kind of checks and balances. And even that, though, is abused where scammers, and I don't know how many scammers you've talked to lately, Carissa, but one thing that they'll do is like, hey, you're selling a car, you're renting a room in your house, you're doing this, that, or the other. I'm going to send my down payment. I'm going to send money beforehand. Just give me your banking information, and I will send the money over immediately. And you do so, and then the next day, $1,000 shows up in your bank account, and you're like, great, everything's perfect. That person from Australia sure is quick. And you go on with your life, you spend your money. Next thing you know, they say, hey, I need that money back. I'm canceling it. Send me that money back, whatever. That's best case scenario, and you don't do it. The money gets taken back out of your bank account because it was used in fraudulent routing information, fraudulent checks, and things like that. And the bank, 3 or 4 days later, finally verifies that that money shouldn't actually exist in your account. And yeah, they take it out. And then in worst case scenario, they say, hey, I need you to refund some money. You approve the refund. They refund even more than they put in, and then they steal the money altogether. Banking in itself is not secure, and I'm not sure if anyone out there has ever, probably have ever run afoul of people shutting down your credit card, false transactions, overdraft fees, and things like that. The thing is that the bank, hopefully your bank is nice, will go back and work with you when it comes to voting. As soon as voting is done and the votes are tallied, you can't go back and cast doubt on who you voted for. Was the vote legitimate? Did I really vote for the person I thought I was voting for? There is zero wiggle room when it comes to casting a singular and all-important ballot.
Right.
You can't go back and kind of change it after the fact. There's a lot of things in the Constitution that kind of prevent that.
But that's the idea. So you shouldn't be able to go back and change it because you already tossed in your ballot. But how does that? Do you feel like people would need or desire to do that, or that people could and obviously intentionally go back through on the back end and change it? I guess
I think the point
how Twitter is doing.
And I think the point that I was trying to make with that was that if you have a situation where you have mass interference and, let's say there was malware on a person's system that that every single vote from a compromised computer was changed to a different person. And you didn't find that out until 6 months after the election. Security officials are able to go in, they're able to audit. And even if you could perfectly verify that, yes, there was a breach, yes, these many people were affected, and yes, these many votes should have been for this person instead of this person.
There's no way to fix that at that point.
You're not allowed to go back. It completely throws the legitimacy of it into question.
Okay.
But at that point, you have to live with it because those are your acting officials, and you can't just say, oh, turns out we've had the wrong president for the past 6 months. No, that should never happen.
That'd be nice.
That's but still, that should never happen. You should have the elected official that kind of everyone voted for. So
right.
For this website to say, hey, we do all this stuff on our phone anyways, why can't we vote? we're just not there yet. So they also said, although there are benefits, there are tons of benefits, including getting more people to vote. One of the reasons that they give that our current political climate is in such peril is that not enough people vote. The fact that only about 20% of people vote, you have a much more polarized electorate, that only those who are really charged about the issues, only those who are really one way or the other are actually going to cast their vote because it's inconvenient, time consuming, it's not a public holiday. So many different factors can come in hand. If 100% of people voted, the election wouldn't be determined by those who are fanatical or, kind of radical about certain issues. And therefore you would have a much better democracy, is because, again, the election wouldn't be decided by those in the extremes. So
I think a lot of that is caused by propaganda too. Like, people are just swayed to not vote by whatever their beliefs are, or whatever their Facebook's telling them, and things like that too. So I guess
to
that
not
also
vote
kind of plays into it.
You said to not vote?
Right. Like, yeah, you're pushing, like, now they're pushing you to vote. But, like, for example, 2016, people were just like, yeah, I see it, but I'm just not going to vote.
Yeah, that is actually something that, that is actually something that people need to be very aware of, and is actually a pretty big talking point of Russian propaganda. And Russian propaganda is happening right now as we speak. The election is currently being meddled with, and everyone needs to really pay attention to what's happening out there on social media, and to even, I would say, ignore a lot of what's happening on social media. But one of the biggest talking points from Russian propagandists is that, people are apathetic towards one candidate or another, or, it's not worth voting for, it's already a foregone conclusion, this person's already going to win, people aren't excited about this candidate. Anything that you see that people are, like, a collective of people are trying to convince you that apathy is the answer, that not voting is the correct choice, that not casting a ballot is good, that is one of the main tenets of Russian propaganda, is that you should not vote for any, for whatever reason. Either you don't like the candidate, both of them are the same, the outcome doesn't change, one or the other, it doesn't matter. Any reason to say that you shouldn't vote is propaganda in and of itself. So that is something that's currently happening, and people need to be aware of that.
Right.
But hey, again, that is another way that elections are being tampered with electronically, but that is completely outside of casting a ballot, and a compromised ballot or anything like that. That kind of election tampering will always be here, because it's social, it's manipulative, it's person to person, it's not an underlying technology. So that will be here forever. Even if we somehow magically figure out how to vote online, that type of election meddling will never go away. So, okay, so here's that point. Mobile voting, it's important. There's a lot of benefits. Completely agree. We're not there yet, and there are answers. But looking through some of my other topics, one thing, for example, let's see, and I can Google this real quick. Actually, Carissa, I'll send you off to Google it. Carissa, find out how many mobile devices have malware on them right now. And, and of course, just find whatever the most recent information you can find. But how many mobile devices have malware already on them? Because... Okay. Yeah, that's something that's super important. I found this other article here saying that malware infects about 30% of computers in the U.S. And this was just published, this is back in 2012. And yeah, you can be sure that that number is even higher, because there's more systems with less anti-malware systems on them. There's already tons of PCs that are compromised with malware. So when you're saying that, hey, I'm going to have a non-compromised system that I can safely vote from, people don't even know what their system is infected with. It's very obvious.
How often do you think mobile, malware for mobile is used?
How often do I think malware for mobile is used?
Like malware prevention.
the amount of people with any kind of malware prevention on their phone is probably 1 in 10. I would guess. I would guess.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's not too bad.
Yeah. Let's see. You sent me a message here. Open that up. And yeah, this is mobile statistics, quarterly findings. About 1.245 thousand detected malicious installers, of which a number of them were mobile banking Trojans, and a number of them were ransomware Trojans, and about 14 million attacks on mobile devices were blocked, but still...
And this is from September 3rd this year.
Yes. And let's see, looking here. Yeah. So about 14 million attacks were thwarted, but at the same time, there are about 1.2 million that aren't, that actually get through and compromise devices. And let's see, so there's that number.
Which makes sense if we take into account the fact that, for example, what was it? The Apple's App Store was, publishing unsecured apps. Yeah. So I'm sure that has something to do with it too, along all the app stores and stuff like that.
Apple, even they wanted to put certificates to show that, that Apple approves whatever app is kind of being used on their app store, but even they rubber stamp, and even they have accidentally let through malware and given it that seal of approval that even gets around, I think, what people would consider one of the more secure operating systems. And Android has much less security measures than what Apple does. And if Apple, kind of rubber stamps a number of these, kind of all the time, Android is infinitely worse. So let's see. So here's the one. Looks like they use a number of ways to, kind of get malware, everything from adware, risk tool, Trojan, and these are all the different kinds of bots that they're using. And by the way, looks like things are dropping a little bit, but other ones are on the rise, and they even show which particular ones are being used. Anyways, the point is, millions of devices in the world currently have malware on them, but people don't know that they're infected. So the problem with doing an online election, a mobile election, any way that you cannot be 100% sure that your device that you're casting your ballot from is secure, as opposed to hopefully, elections done in person in a central location that have systems that are specifically designed, built, and deployed for voting can all be kind of constantly under visual monitoring, can be scanned for malware, can be, kind of wiped fresh and then reinstalled with the proper operating system, and, just barely enough to get the voting done. At least each state is able to some extent, make sure that the devices that they cast votes from are actually secure. And if you did that online, no possible way. You just had to trust. Right. So that's my point. Let's see. So there's that, and there's even a PDF that was published by the FBI, I think earlier this year. And essentially they're talking about the exact same thing. And one of the overview that they found, the different ways that you actually have technology interact with the election and how effective or how much risk there is associated with it. So one of the most obvious ways that you could kind of start getting technology into elections would be like the lowest risk way would be a digital copy of a blank ballot provided to the voter. So right now, hopefully a lot of people are doing voting ballots or voting by mail, and they send it to your address. It's personalized for you, whatever. They're saying if you're able to download a blank ballot of the copy, a blank copy of the ballot, that would be very helpful, because then anyone can get it. The risk assessment is low. If you get any kind of corrupted ballot, or if anyone tries to give you an incorrect ballot, you can very easily see that, the wrong candidates were in the spot or whatever. It's a good way to start. Some of them include, there are some risks, but that's pretty good. Another way is making voter selections on digital ballot through the electronic interface. So think about a web portal, kind of like the healthcare marketplace, or just anywhere that you go to a secure portal that you can't change, you can't access, but you submit information such as, I want to vote for this person, this person, this person. It's pretty good, but some of the problems include electronic ballot marking faces security risks to the integrity and availability of a single voter's ballot. So being able to verify through that kind of system that Ben's ballot that Ben filled out through that portal, it's very hard for Ben to go back and verify that, I voted this way and they kind of counted it that way.
But why is that difficult, though? Because, like, for example, if you are in the healthcare marketplace, when I was, previously signing up for that, it's like, okay, put your e-signature all over this thing and type in all of this, confirming information. So why can't you?
Because there are man-in-the-middle attacks is just one example that to you look like you're filling it out, and they can even save that on your side. But when it gets submitted to the other side for for counting, for tabulation, whatever, that can be changed, in the middle. And
I see.
Yeah, and so you can still request your information. It'll show you everything that that you just filled out. But then Ben cannot prove that they received Ben's actual answers. It's not transparent enough when you do a set online portal that can't be verified by the individual. And then they, of course, have electronic transmission of voted ballot, which is high. Same issue, but to the nth degree. So I think that's enough talking about, kind of theoreticals. I really wanted to talk about this particular instance with Estonia, and it has to do with their I-voting system, because it was 2013 and you had to put the lowercase I in front of everything. Those were the rules of the day. The I-voting system. So back in the early 2000s, Estonia...
In other years.
Yeah, not even that, but back in the early 2000s, Estonia did something that we haven't really done in any other country. They have a state-sponsored electronic verification system where they issue essentially like driver's license or any other kind of form of government ID. Estonia has an online voting system that piggybacks off of the electronic verification system that they have built. You can identify yourself, you can keep it on your phone, you can have it emailed. You essentially have a driver's license that is completely digital, and it has a secret code. It has, kind of like a social security number on it. There's plenty of checks and balances, and the point is, their voting piggybacks off of that ability to have that verified user through the e-voting system, or their i-voting system. They said that several countries have experimented with casting votes on the internet, but no nation uses internet voting for binding political election to a larger degree than Estonia. They said that when they introduced the voting system in 2005, it became the first country to offer the internet voting nationally. Since then, it has used system in local or national elections 7 times, and in the most recent election, over 30% of participating voters cast their ballots online. People around the world look to Estonia's example, and some wonder why they can't vote online too. But it's controversial. So, and we're going to talk.
The idea of those little IDs, though. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and that is right here, the national ID cards. An essential building block of the i-voting system is the Estonia's national ID infrastructure, which plays a central role in the country's high-tech and e-government strategy. They're smart cards with the ability to perform cryptographic function. With the use of the card readers and client software, Estonians can authenticate to websites and make legally binding signatures and documents. The cards are popular I'm sorry, they're used for online banking and accessing e-government services. In the iVoting system, voters use their ID cards to authenticate to the servers and to sign their ballots. So I'm guessing for any kind of government benefits, or again, kind of paying your taxes, and you want to make sure that the taxes go to the right place. They have QR codes. They have cryptographic functions so that if you need a password, you can kind of like scan a code, put in a code that's on the card. They can work as a password themselves. They have 2 RSA, and this gets really techy with RSA key pairs, one for authentication and one for digital signatures. Certificates binding the public key to the cardholder's identity are stored in the card. Blah blah blah. Essentially, they have a card. They have a PIN code. This is as electronic as identification has gotten in most places. This is something that is definitely very advanced compared to the US, where you have a driver's license or a passport, and that is your form of government ID. At least Estonia has that e-ID and that electronic identification that you can even use with smartphones. So anyways, all that being said, the iVoting system and the servers that they use, and they even have a nice little diagram that we're not really going to go over, but yeah, essentially you scan your ballot and you scan your ID so that you pair your ballot with your ID. The server on the government side verifies that, yes, you are an eligible voter and that you are using your assigned ID, that you're not using anyone else's. It pairs the unique QR code of your ballot to your ID so that this is your ballot and your ID. And then it does this whole handshaking at every step of the way. Everything from finding the ballot with the voter ID set to the candidate. It has a couple of checks to make sure that it actually does it. It stores it on the server, and then for that they store it on the counting server. All that combined, handshakes all along the way. You cast a ballot. It's tied to your ID, and then to get around, and I actually found this very interesting. Carissa, do you remember the whole thing we were talking about? Casting a private ballot and making sure that there's no one kind of coercing you. Yeah. They even thought about how to get around that is by you can actually cast multiple ballots if you feel like it. If you feel like you're casting it with a group of friends, or if someone, worst case scenario, holds you at gunpoint and says, cast your ballot for this person. And, somehow they thought that they were going to hold enough people at gunpoint to vote for a particular person, whatever. They actually thought of that by saying that you can cast your ballot multiple times, and they will only count the last ballot that you submitted. And worst case scenario, if you can't find a way to get away from the person at gunpoint, if you go in and vote in person, the in-person ballot would override all other ballots that you have submitted up until that point. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, they thought,
nice.
Yeah, they definitely thought about that. And again, if you don't trust this online voting system, you can go and vote in person, and that will be counted either way. But you can still try to vote online if you want. So they have definitely tried to account for as many things as they can. But even this study, which you can, we're going to put in the show notes, they even show that in some cases it still wasn't enough. And in this part of the observation, oh, and by the way, they have like a little diagram here that shows all the handshakes and the voting and the storage and all this kind of thing. Yeah, they've tried it. So the observations that they found, first of all, inadequate procedural controls. Even if this was set up to be completely foolproof, which it isn't, Carissa, one example here, and this is, I think, one of the the biggest issue. If you don't believe there's any other issue, this is the biggest problem as to why we don't have online voting. Procedures for handling anomalous conditions that could imply an attack appear to be inadequate, and, well, the response does not exist. For example, tamper-evident seals are used on the server racks in the data center. When asked what happens if the seals were found to be compromised, election staff responded that they were unsure.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the biggest problem. It's like, you can have the procedure, you can have everything accounted for, everything's perfect. If there's an issue, you can find it, solve it, whatever. But when it comes time to actually implement it, the person who is overseeing the, let's say, the server racks, and they see that the tamper evident sticker is broken, what do? And if they go, we don't know, I guess we'll tell someone, but who do we tell? And if at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't get to the right person and the right procedures weren't followed, hey, the whole thing breaks down. Like, you're still at some point relying on human reaction to solving this whole thing. There's zero chance you have technology completely cure this thing. And even to that point, even if you have good procedures, sometimes those procedures happen kind of on the fly. One example that they give in this research paper is that filming and taking pictures within the servers, because they wanted, election officials wanted people to see how their votes were cast and how they were being stored and how this whole system worked. They want to be transparent. So they let reporters and people with cameras and videos and, whatever come into these facilities. But then a day later, they're like, this could be a national security risk. And they revoke that right. So a day later, they said, hey, you're not allowed to film. You're not allowed to take pictures. You're not allowed to, kind of see what's going on back here. That flip-flop, which is actually the right call, who's to say? And again, this happened within the system that you thought was actually, super, super ahead of its time. Another thing they found, lacks operational security. That just goes to show that, hey, if you put on a suit and a tie and you walk into the facility, in most cases, they will probably let you walk through and do whatever you want. Act like you belong. It gets you in a lot of places. Another thing that they said, insufficient transparency. Like I was saying before, they try to be transparent, but how do you be completely transparent without also being vulnerable at the same time? It's a tough line to draw. And when it comes to election voting, very, 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 very tough. They even have some pictures in here that are pretty funny. One of the figures is an unsecured build system. Operators used a PC containing other software, including PokerStars.ee, which is a gambling site, to sign the official voting client for public distribution. This risked infecting the client with malware spread from the PC.
Yikes.
Yeah. They, even the PCs that are being used to implement the voting system are themselves not secure because humans are, lazy. Insecure software downloads. Operators downloaded software over insecure connections for use in pre-election setup. An attacker who injected malware into these downloads might be able to compromise. Carissa, this is why there was such a push for HTTPS as opposed to HTTP. Having that secure network means that, let's say you try to go download something from Computer America. The S signifies that a third party says, yes, that is Computer America. It's not just Computer America saying it's Computer America, but it's, OpenDNS says that is Computer America. When they downloaded the election software, when they downloaded the election software, they downloaded it from a non-secure site, which means that someone could have gotten in there and given them the wrong software because it was not a secured server. Another one of these pictures, keystrokes reveal root passwords. Videos posted by officials during the election show operators typing, inadvertently revealing root passwords for the election servers.
Oh, Lord.
Even behind this one, they have two gentlemen here who are sitting and, the network that the government uses to implement these changes for everyone to use, they posted a picture And yes, this was an an official video that they posted on the wall behind the computer, which I'm sure is not unlike many offices here in America. They had the Wi-Fi network and the Wi-Fi password, because you don't want to answer that question 100 times a day, so you post it in plain sight, and anyone who walks in can see the password and see the network. Not very secure whatsoever. Another one, a personal USB stick. Against procedure, an official used a USB stick containing personal files when moving the official election results off the counting server. Think about that. Someone had their own family photos, or in worst case scenario, if this is the person who would actually compromise the whole thing, might have had fake ballots or fake tallies that, when they were pulling the election results off of the server, they could have had another one ready to go right there. It was a personal USB stick. Carissa, how does that make you feel? That, obviously a country that has, looking at these diagrams, seeing their procedure, piggybacking off of the national ID cards, which are a very well thought out system, all of this, and they still make these rudimentary mistakes.
It's just human related. It's the human element that's tainting all of that, and
it always will.
It's something, because there's so much potential with that online ID.
Yeah, and really it always will, because you cannot take humans out of any part of this, because at some point you can't just trust technology 100%. It has to be able to be audited. It has to be able to be reviewed. Right. There have to be, checkpoints where people, actual physical humans, actually look at this and say, oh, is everything going correctly? And at those checkpoints, yeah, you're going to have issues. And even, and
then you're at the mercy of the person that's looking at it. What if they're a good person or a bad person? What are their intentions? That kind of thing too.
Exactly. So they, this research paper goes in a little bit further, saying that they did a mock election setup. They have, threats that they could have done, everything from voting from home computers to compromised cell phones and things like that. Essentially, they remade the election. Did like a fake election, and they were able to compromise the Estonian election from the client side, from the server side, and really just from every, and also attacking the ballot secrecy. So you could even see who voted for who and what. And again, the ability to cast a secret ballot is crucial to a fair democratic vote. Because otherwise, a person of power could get into, power and be able to attack anyone who voted against them. So a secret ballot, very, very important. The point is, let's go ahead and jump down here at the end. The conclusion to this whole thing, which you can see right here, is that compared to other online services like banking and e-commerce, voting is an exceedingly difficult problem due to the need to ensure accurate outcomes while simultaneously providing a secret ballot. Again, it's that thing where you have to verify, but also, hey, you need to keep people safe and secure and not tell anyone. When Estonia's iVoting system was conceived in the early 2000s, it was an innovative approach to the challenge. However, the design accepted certain trade-offs, including the need to trust central servers, concluding that although they could take steps to reduce these risks through procedural controls, which is if we make sure that people are doing their job, everything should be okay. Even with that being said, the fundamental problem remains to be solved. More than a decade later, the problem remains unsolved, and those risks are greatly magnified due to the rapid proliferation of state-sponsored attacks. Because, Joe Schmo, whose job it is to move the data from one place to another, hey, there's entire multi-billion-dollar efforts that are in place. Let's say, somewhere that's never had an election issue before, Crimea in Russia. There are very tangible benefits for countries to interfere in elections. So there you go. So the security researchers have said, as we have observed, the procedures Estonia has in place to guard against an attack and ensure transparency offer insufficient protection. Based on our tests, we conclude that a state-level attacker, sophisticated criminal, or dishonest insider, like you were saying, Carissa, could defeat both the technological and procedural controls in order to manipulate the outcome. Short of this, there are abundant ways that an attacker could disrupt the voting process or cast doubt to the legitimacy of the results. If nothing else, Carissa, let's say that one person, ignoring entire organizations, FBI level collusion, things like that. Let's say that one person went in, changed their ballot from their side, and was able to go on a propaganda spree and say, look at what I was able to do. I found out that I could change my vote, or someone could change my vote. Imagine what that would do for the US elections, that one person could go on a spree and say, no one's vote is secure because I was able to compromise my own ballot. That would put the entire election into jeopardy.
Absolutely.
And that's what's happening every single day. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have like 5 minutes left, and I think, Carissa, we've made it pretty clear that, even in a place like Estonia, which I think that people don't really consider Estonia to be a bastion of technology, but they are very, very far ahead of other countries when it comes to voting online. Even their voting system is not completely secure, and even they said probably never will be. Now, all this different stuff, let's go ahead and talk about some solutions. And again, I found tons of different resources talking about voting by email and how it's still a threat. Even Microsoft has designed Election Guard, which is to verify voting. The point is, no one really recommends this, and the system... let's see, here's one system that a gentleman said he wants to be a blockchain pilot program for active duty service members to vote. And I believe this was Votes, if I'm not mistaken.
So what is a blockchain, first of all?
Blockchain is much like Bitcoin. I think that people kind of use the two interchangeably, but Bitcoin is built on the blockchain. The blockchain is essentially a ledger that has all the different transactions and all of the different codes, and saying that, if Ben, which has this key, this key represents Ben, although it doesn't specifically say Ben, this key sent this other key this amount of money, and that is preserved forever. That transaction is forever preserved. That is the blockchain, and the blockchain is constantly distributed to everyone who uses the system, everyone who sends, who makes a Bitcoin wallet, everyone who mines for Bitcoin. Essentially, if you wanted to change one transaction in the blockchain, you would have to compromise a billion different computers and change that transaction simultaneously, because if there's ever a conflict, then that is resolved by comparing it to every other system out there.
Right.
It seems secure, but at the same time, it's one thing to send someone a transaction like you do with Bitcoin. It's another thing to secretly submit a ballot, be able to identify that this ballot belongs to this person, but still keeping it a secret. And then on top of that, being able to submit that ballot to the blockchain and do all this on the fly. The point is, there's this article, and then I found another article. Here we go. MIT has different vulnerabilities, and essentially says, no, the blockchain is not the answer to any of this. Third parties cannot be trusted. There are still men in the middle attacks. The same problems that we have with, let's say, the Estonian election, you have the same problems with blockchain voting. It's just not the answer. So what is the answer? In our last two minutes, let's talk about the answer. Carissa, what is the answer? Tell us right now.
I think it should be better regulations and more security somehow.
You're not wrong. That would be if in the future we allow this kind of thing to happen on a wider basis, because again, it's already happening. This is happening. It's just not being done commonly.
Right.
But the actual answer that so many security professionals are giving resoundingly, and this was the conclusion that I think almost every article that I checked was, well, mail-in ballots. Mail-in voting, being able to vote by mail, have a physical ballot that you can still trace back to, and let's face it, the availability of a mail-in ballot should be universal. The U.S. Postal Service does so much work to ensure that everyone can get their mail, get it in a timely fashion, can confidently and securely handle that mail that is sent, because let's face it, messing with the Postal Service is a federal crime in and of itself.
Right.
There are measures in place, and again, you can't hack a paper ballot. You cannot, no matter how much digital stuff you do, you can never change a pen stroke on a piece of paper. So the answer to voting, after saying all of this and how electronic voting in the future may one day become a thing, well, the best answer is to vote by mail, and hopefully that's what we'll see this year, especially in a pandemic year. So I hope this, we gave some real world examples. I hope that we could illuminate you a little bit. It's a very complicated topic, but it's a very non-complicated answer. If you want secure voting, do it by mail. That is the answer, not by the internet. So everyone, music in the background means that we're done. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Carissa, I hope you learned something. I know that I did doing the research here for this, and everyone out there, I hope you had fun.
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was a good show.
Perfect. All right, everyone, we'll catch you next time. More Computer America in this week. We'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.